The Airbus A330 is a wide-body twin-engine jet airliner made by Airbus, a division of Airbus Group. Versions of the A330 have a range of 7,400 to 13,430 kilometers and can accommodate up to 335 passengers in a two-class layout or carry 70 tons of cargo. The origin of the A330 dates to the 1970s as one of several conceived derivatives of Airbus's first airliner, the A300. The A330 was developed in parallel with the A340, which shared many common airframe components but differed in number of engines. Both airliners incorporated fly-by-wire flight control technology, first introduced on an Airbus aircraft with the A320, as well as the A320's six-display glass cockpit. In June 1987, after receiving orders from various customers, Airbus launched the A330 and A340. The A330 was Airbus's first airliner that offered a choice of three engines: General Electric CF6, Pratt Whitney PW4000, and Rolls-Royce Trent 700. The A330-300, the first variant, took its maiden flight in November 1992 and entered passenger service with Air Inter in January 1994. Responding to dwindling sales, Airbus followed up with the slightly shorter A330-200 variant in 1998. Subsequently developed A330 variants included dedicated freighter, the A330-200F, and a military tanker, the A330 Mrtt. The A330 Mrtt formed the basis of the proposed KC-45, entered into the U.S. Air Force's KC-X competition in conjunction with Northrop Grumman, where after an initial win, on appeal lost to Boeing's tanker. Since its launch, the A330 has allowed Airbus to expand market share in wide-body airliners. Airlines have selected the A330 as a replacement for less economical trajets and versus rival twin jets. Boeing has offered variants of the 767 and 777 as competitors, along with the 787, which entered service in late 2011. Airbus's A350 will also share this wide-body airliner market. The largest operator is Air China, which has 41 A330s in its fleet. The A330 is expected to continue selling until at least 2020. As of December 2013, the A330's order book stands at 1,313, of which 1,046 have been delivered. Development. Background. Airbus's first airliner, the A300, was envisioned as part of a diverse family of commercial aircraft. In pursuit of this goal, studies began in the early 1970s into derivatives of the A300. Before introducing the A300, Airbus identified 9 possible variations named A300B1 through B9. A 10th variant, the A300B10, was conceived in 1973 and developed into the longer-range Airbus A310. Airbus then focused its efforts on single-aisle studies, conceiving of a family of airliners later known as the Airbus A320 family, the first commercial aircraft with digital fly-by-wire controls. During the SA studies, Airbus turned its focus back to the wide-body aircraft market, simultaneously working on both projects. In the mid-1970s, Airbus began development of the A300B9, a larger derivative of the A300, which would eventually become the A330. The B9 was essentially a lengthened A300 with the same wing, coupled with the most powerful turbofan engines available. It was targeted at the growing demand for high-capacity, medium-range, transcontinental trunk routes. Offering the same range and payload as the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 but with 25% more fuel efficiency, the B9 was seen as a viable replacement for the DC-10 and the Lockheed L-1011T Starter jets. It was also considered as a medium-ranged successor to the A300. At the same time, a 200-seat four-engine version, the B-11 was also under development. That aircraft was originally planned to take the place of narrow-body Boeing 707s and Douglas DC-8s then in commercial use, but would later evolve to target the long-range, wide-body trajet replacement market. To differentiate from the SA series, the B9 and B-11 were redesignated as the TA-9 and TA-11, with TA standing for twin-aisle. development costs were reduced by using the same fuselage and wing for the two aircraft, with projected savings of $500 a million. Another factor was the split preference of those within Airbus and, more importantly, those of the company's prospective customers. Twin jets were favored in North America, quad jets desired in Asia, and operators had mixed views in Europe. Airbus ultimately found that most potential customers favored four engines due to their exemption from existing twin-jet range restrictions and their ability to be ferried with one inactive engine. As a result, development plans prioritized the four-engine TA-11 ahead of the TA-9. Design effort: the first specifications for the TA-9 and TA-11, aircraft that could accommodate 410 passengers in a one-class layout, emerged in 1982. They showed a large underfloor cargo area that could hold 5 cargo pallets or 16 LD3 cargo containers in the forward, and 4 pallets or 14 LD3s in the aft holder, double the capacity of the Lockheed L-1011 TRI Star or DC-10 and 8.46 meters longer than the Airbus A330. By June 1985, the TA-9 and TA-11 had received more improvements, including the adoption of the A320 flight deck, digital fly-by-wire control system, and side-stick control. Airbus had developed a common cockpit for their aircraft models to allow quick transition by pilots. The flight crews could transition from one type to another after only 1 week's training, which reduces operator costs. The two TAs would use the vertical stabilizer, rudder, and circular fuselage sections of the A300-600, extended by 2 barrel sections. Airbus briefly considered the variable camber wing, a concept that requires changing the wing profile for a given phase of flight. Studies were carried out by British Aerospace, now part of BAE Systems, at Hatfield and Bristol. Airbus estimated this would yield a 2% improvement in aerodynamic efficiency, but the feature was rejected because of cost and difficulty of development. A true laminar flow wing was also considered but rejected. From the beginning of the TA-9's development, a choice of engines from the 3 major engine manufacturers, Rolls-Royce, Pratt Whitney, and GE Aviation, was planned. GE Aviation first offered the General Electric CF6-ATC2. However, later studies indicated that more thrust was needed to increase the initial power capability from 267 to 289 kN. GE enlarged the CF6-ATC2 fan from 236 to 244 cm to create the CF6-ATE1, giving a new thrust output of 320 kN. Rolls-Royce initially wanted to use the 267 kN Trent 600 to power Airbus's newest twin-jet and the upcoming McDonnell Douglas MD-11. However, the company later agreed to develop an engine solely for the A330, the Trent 700, with a larger diameter and 311 kN of thrust. Similarly, Pratt & Whitney signed an agreement that covered the development of the A330 only by LA, 4168. The company increased the fan size to augment power, enabling the engine to deliver 311 kN of thrust. On January 27, 1986, the Airbus Industry Supervisory Board held a meeting in Munich, West Germany. Afterwards, the board chairman, Franz Josef Strauss, released a statement that said, "Airbus Industry is now in a position to finalize the detailed technical definition of the TA-9, which is now officially designated the A330, and the TA-11, now called the A340, with potential launch customer airlines, and to discuss with them the terms and conditions for launch commitments." The designations were originally reversed. They were switched so the quad-jet airliner would have a 4 in its name. Airbus hoped for 5 airlines to sign for both the A330 and A340, and on May 12 sent sale proposals to the most likely candidates, including Lufthansa and Swissair. Production and testing: in preparation for production of the A330 and A340, Airbus's partners invested heavily in new facilities. In England, Filton was the site of BAE's £7 a million investment in a 3-storey technical centre with 15,000 am2 of floor area. BA also spent £5 a million on a new production line at its Chester wing production plant. In Germany, Messerschmitt Bar Paragraph LKOW Bloch invested DM400 a million at various manufacturing facilities in the Weser estuary, including at Bremen, Einswarden, Varel, and Hamburg. France saw the biggest investments, with all copyright Rospatiel starting construction of a new FR 2.5 billion final assembly plant adjacent to Toulouse-Blagnac Airport in Colomiers. By November 1988, the pillars for the new CLA copyright Mentadeur assembly hall had been erected. The assembly process featured increased automation, such as robots drilling holes and installing fasteners during the wing-to-fuselage mating process. On March 12, 1987, Airbus received the first orders for the twinjet. The domestic French airline Air Inter placed 5 firm orders and 15 options, while Thai Airways International requested 8 aircraft, split evenly between firm orders and options. Airbus announced the next day that it would formally launch the A330 and A340 programs by April 1987, with deliveries of the A340 to begin in May 1992 and A330 deliveries to start in 1993. Northwest Airlines signed a letter of intent for 20 A340s and 10 A330s on March 31. BA eventually received £450 a million of funding from the UK government, well short of the £750 a million it had originally requested for the design and construction of the wings. The German and French governments also provided funding. Airbus issued subcontracts to companies in Australia, Austria, Canada, China, Greece, Italy, India, Japan, South Korea, Portugal, the United States, and the former Yugoslavia. With funding in place, Airbus launched the A330 and A340 programs on June 5, 1987, just prior to the Paris Air Show. At that time, the order book stood at 130 aircraft from 10 customers, including Lessor International Lease Finance Corporation. Of the order total, 41 were for A330s. In 1989, Asian carrier Cathay Pacific joined the list of purchasers, ordering 9 A330s and later increasing this number to 11. The wing-to-fuselage mating of the first A330, the 10th airframe of the A330 and A340 line, began in mid-February 1992. This aircraft, coated with anti-corrosion paint, was rolled out on March 31 without its General Electric CF6-80E1 engines, which were installed by August. During a static test, the wing failed just below requirement. BA engineers later solved the problem. At the 1992 Farnborough Air Show, Northwest deferred delivery of 16 A330s to 1994, following the cancellation of its A340 orders. The first completed A330 was rolled out on October 14, 1992, with the maiden flight following on November 2. Weighing 181,840 kg, including 20,980 kg of test equipment, the A330 became the biggest twinjet to have flown, until the later first flight of the Boeing 777. The flight lasted 5 hours and 15 minutes, during which speed, height, and other flight configurations were tested. Airbus intended the test flight program to comprise 6 aircraft flying a total of 1,800 hours. On October 21, 1993, the Airbus A330 received the European Joint Aviation Authorities and U.S. Federal Aviation Administration certifications simultaneously after 1,114 cumulative airborne test hours and 426 test flights. At the same time, weight tests came in favorable, showing the plane was 500 kg underweight. On June 30, 1994, trouble struck during certification of the Pratt Whitney engine when an A330 crashed near Toulouse. Both pilots and the 5 passengers died. The flight was designed to test autopilot response during a one-engine off worst-case scenario with the center of gravity near its aft limit. Shortly after takeoff, the pilots had difficulty setting the autopilot, and the aircraft lost speed and crashed. The accident was investigated by an internal branch of Direction Générale d'Aviation, which concluded that the accident resulted from slow response and incorrect actions by the crew during the recovery. This led to a revision of A330 operating procedures. Entry into service. Air Inter became the first operator of the A330, putting the aircraft into service on January 17, 1994 between Orly Airport, Paris, and Marseille. Deliveries to Malaysia Airlines and Thai Airways International were postponed to address delamination of the composite materials in the Palais 4168 engine's thrust reverser assembly. Thai Airways received its first A330 during the second half of the year, operating it on routes from Bangkok to Taipei and Seoul. Cathay Pacific received its Trent 700 A330s following the certification of that engine on December 22, 1994. MAS received its A330 on February 1, 1995 and then rescheduled its other 10 orders. Airbus intended the A330 to compete in the extended-range twin-engine operation performance standards market, specifically with the Boeing 767. Instead of the ETOPS out-of-the-box, or early ETOPS approach taken by Boeing with its 777, Airbus gradually increased ETOPS approval on the A330 using in-service experience. Airbus suggested that the A340 and A330 were essentially identical except for their engine number, and that the A340's experience could be applied to the A330's ETOPS approval. The plans were for all three engine types to enter service with 90-minute approval, before increasing to 120 minutes after the total A330 fleet accumulated 25,000 flight hours, and then to 180 minutes after 50,000 flight hours, in 1995. Aer Lingus and Cathay Pacific were two important airlines assisting Airbus in this endeavour by building up and service flight hours on over-ocean flights. In November 2009, the A330 became the first aircraft to receive ETOPS Euro 240 approval, which has since been offered by Airbus as an option. Further developments, in response to a decline in A330-300 sales, increased market penetration by the Boeing 767-300ER, and airline requests for increased range and smaller aircraft, Airbus developed the Airbus A330-200. Known as the A329 and A330 M10 during development, the A330-200 would offer 9% lower operating costs than the Boeing 767-300ER. The plane was aimed at the 11,900 km sector, where Airbus predicted demand for 800 aircraft between 1995 and 2015. The project, with $450 a million in expected development costs, was approved by the Airbus Industry Supervisory Board on November 24, 1995. The A330-200 first flew on August 13, 1997. The 16-month certification process involved logging 630 hours of test flights. The A330-200's first customer was ILFC. These aircraft were leased by Canada 3000, who became the type's first operator. As Airbus worked on its A330-200, hydraulic pump problems were reported by both A330 and A340 operators. This issue was the suspected cause of a fire that destroyed an Air France A340-200 in January 1994. On January 4 that year, a Malaysia Airlines A330-300, while undergoing regular maintenance at Singapore Changi Airport, was consumed by a fire that started in the right-hand main undercarriage well. The incident caused $30 a million in damage, and the aircraft took 6 months to repair. Consequently, operators were advised to disable electrical pumps in January 1997. Several in-flight shutdowns of Trent 700 Euro-powered A330-300s occurred. On November 11, 1996, engine failure on a Cathay Pacific flight forced it back to Ho Chi Minh City. On April 17, 1997, Cathay Pacific's subsidiary Dragonmare experienced an engine shutdown on an A330, caused by carbon clogging the oil filter. As a result, Cathay Pacific self-suspended its 120-minute ETOPS clearance. Another engine failure occurred on May 6 during combat with a Cathay Pacific A330, due to a bearing failure in a Hispano-Suiza-built gearbox. 3 days later, a Cathay Pacific A330 on combat during a Bangkok-Hong Kong flight experienced a drop in oil pressure and a resultant engine spool down, forcing the flight back to Bangkok. The cause was later traced to metal contamination in the engine's master chip. Following a fifth engine failure on May 23, Cathay Pacific and Dragoner voluntarily grounded their A330 fleets for 2 weeks, causing major disruption as Cathay's 11 A330s made up 15% of its passenger capacity. Rolls-Royce and Hispano-Suiza worked to resolve the problem, leading to a redesigned lubrication system. Airbus next worked on an A330 Freighter variant. Responding to flagging A300-600F and A310F sales, the company began marketing the Airbus A330-200F, a derivative of the A330-200, around 2001. The Freighter has a range of 7,400 km with a 65 tons payload, or 5,900 km with 70 tons. The plane utilizes the same nozzle gear as the passenger version, however it is attached lower in the fuselage and housed in a distinctive bulbous blister fairing. This raises the nose of the aircraft so that the cargo deck is level during loading, as the standard A330's landing gear results the plane having a nose-down attitude while on the ground. The A330-200F made its maiden flight on November 5, 2009. This marked the start of a 4-month, 180-hour certification program. JAA and FAA certifications were expected by March the following year, although approval by the JAA was delayed until April. The first delivery was subsequently made to the Etihad Airways cargo division, Etihad Cargo, in July 2010. Airbus announced in February 2011 that it intended to raise production rates from 7.5 to 8 per month to 9 per month in 2012, and 10 per month in 2013. By the end of December 2012, a total of 1,244 A330s had been ordered, with 938 delivered. Production increased to 10 aircraft per month in April 2013, the highest for an Airbus wide-body aircraft. Airbus expects the A330 to continue selling until at least 2020. On July 19, 2013, Airbus delivered the 1,000th A330 to Cathay Pacific. It is the first Airbus wide-body airliner to reach 1,000 deliveries, and the fourth wide-body to achieve the milestone after the Boeing 747, 767 and 777. On September 25, 2013 at the Aviation Expo China, Airbus announced a new lower-weight variant of its A330-300 that is optimized for use on domestic and regional routes in high-growth markets with large populations and concentrated traffic flows, with China and India recognized as the prime targets. This variant could carry up to 400 passengers. The increased efficiency, however, comes more from the installation of more seats than any actual reduction in weight. On relatively short, yet congested routes, the A330 competes against single-aisle jetliners. While the A330's operating economics in those conditions can be not far above those of the Boeing 737 or Airbus A321, the A320 Neo and 737 MAX promise to be far more efficient. Where the frequency of flights cannot be increased, the use of a larger aircraft, such as the A330, is the only available option to increase capacity. A330 Neo, Airbus management has been studying whether to equip the A330 with newer, more efficient engines, new engine option, or Neo. John Leahy's argument is that the lower purchase price of an A330 even without new engines make the economics of buying an A330 competitive at mid-range routes with that of the Boeing 787. Candidate engines include variants of Rolls-Royce's Trent 1000 and General Electric's Genx 1B. Both engine makers are reportedly interested in winning an exclusive deal should a re-engined A330 be offered. The Trent 1010 engine is under development for the 787-10, but Rolls-Royce intends to offer it for a number of aircraft. Both engines are heavier than the A330's existing engines, so Airbus will have to strengthen the wings to accept them. Airbus' recent customer, AirAsia X, which ordered 25 A330 aircraft in December 2013, has pushed Airbus to develop a re-engined A330 that would boast a substantially lower fuel burn, as has Delta Airlines with its request for proposals to replace its 747-400s and 767-300ER fleets. AirAsia X believes that the A330 Neo will give the airline a second chance to establish a profitable flight schedule connecting Kuala Lumpur to London and Paris. In 2012, AirAsia X's first attempt failed to make money because the Airbus A340 aircraft employed proved far too fuel inefficient. CIT believes an A330 Neo service on short to medium-haul routes, carrying 250 Euro 300 passengers, can produce higher profit margins than either the A350 or the 787, due to the latter two's optimization for longer routes. It specifically cites the A350-800 as not as efficient as they'd like. On the other hand, Stephen Upvorhazy, chairman of Air Lease Corporation, does not accept that reasoning, telling Aviation Week, "We don't believe it is rational for us to take the A350-800 and the A330 Neo. I don't see the A350-800 surviving if does the A330 Neo." Prolonging the production run of the A330 with the Neo may help Airbus maintain profitability as it transitions to the A350, the first model transition Airbus has had to manage. A major upgrade program for the A330 could also cause problems for Airbus. The re-engined A330 would be launched into a twin-aisle market already crowded by the Boeing 787, 777X, and Airbus A350, and could take sales from other Airbus aircraft. Starting the A330 Neo program would likely result in a short-term drop in A330 sales, Airbus' most profitable program, as customers wait for the new version. Airbus is also considering re-engineering the A380, but running two costly upgrade programs at the same time could overwhelm the company's resources. Mrt's recent cancellation of a 70-plane order for the A350 may place more urgency on the decision. Airbus announced the A330-800 Neo and A330-900 Neo at the Farnborough Air Show on July 14, 2014. Both variants are to have a maximum takeoff weight of 242 tons. The design is planned to be frozen for the type in 2015. The A330-900 Neo is to be introduced in the fourth quarter of 2017, while the 252-seat A330-800 Neo is to be introduced in early 2018. Aerodynamic modifications are to include a retwisted wing and optimized slats. A350-style wing tips will increase the wingspan by 3.7 m to 64 m. Airbus predicted a 14% fuel consumption reduction per seat. This is for the new -900 Neo compared to the previous 235-ton -300 version. It is 8.5% more efficient per seat against the newer 242-ton -300, and is also due to 10 additional seats from a new galley design. The block fuel burn is 5.1% lower. Compared to the 235-ton version, the larger 112-inch Trent 7000 is 11% more efficient than the 97-inch previous engine, and the aerodynamic optimizations offers a 4% gain, countering a 2% loss due to increased weight and 1% due to additional drag from the larger engine. Fuel consumption per seat is additionally improved by 2% due to the rearranged cabin with increased seating. Design. The A330 is a medium-size, wide-body airliner, with two engines suspended on pylons under the wings. On the ground, the two-wheel nose undercarriage and two four-wheel bogie main legs built by Messier Doughty support a maximum ramp weight of 230.9 tons, while the designed maximum takeoff weight is 230 tons on the A330-200 variant. An option allows a maximum ramp weight of 233.9 tons with a maximum takeoff weight of 233.0 tons. The airframe of the A330 features a low-wing cantilever monoplane with a wing virtually identical to that of the A340. The wings were designed and manufactured by Bauer, which developed a long slender wing with a very high aspect ratio to provide high aerodynamic efficiency. The wing is swept back at 30 degrees and, along with other design features, allows a maximum operating Mach number of 0.86. The wing has a very high thickness-to-chord ratio of 12.8%, which means that a long span and high aspect ratio can be attained without a severe weight penalty. For comparison, the rival MD-11 has a thickness-to-chord ratio of 8 to 9%. Each wing also has a 2.74 am tall winglet instead of the wingtip fences found on earlier Airbus aircraft. The shared wing design with the A340 allowed the A330 to incorporate aerodynamic features developed for the former aircraft. The failure of International Aero Engine's radical ultra-high bypass V2500 superfan, which had promised around 15% fuel burn reduction for the A340, led to multiple enhancements including wing upgrades to compensate. Originally designed with a 56 am span, the wing was later extended to 58.6 am and finally to 60.3 am. At 60.3 am, the wingspan is similar to that of the larger Boeing 747-200, but with 35% less wing area. The A330 and A340 fuselage is based on that of the Airbus A330-600, with many common parts, and has the same external and cabin width, 5.64 am and 5.28 am. Allowed seating arrangements are 2 €2 abreast in first class, 2 €3 €27 abreast in business class, 2 €4 €28 abreast in economy class, or 3-3-39 abreast in high-density economy class. The vertical stabilizer and rudder are made mostly of composite materials. When necessary, the A330 uses the Honeywell 331 A350C auxiliary power unit to provide pneumatics and electrical power. The A330 shares the same glass cockpit flight deck layout as the A320 and A340, featuring electronic instrument displays rather than mechanical gauges. Instead of a conventional control yoke, the flight deck features side-stick controls, 6 main displays, and the electronic flight instrument system, which covers navigation and flight displays, as well as the electronic centralized aircraft monitor. Apart from the flight deck, the A330 also has the fly-by-wire system common to the A320 family, the A340, the A350, and the A380. It also features 3 primary and 2 secondary flight control systems, as well as a flight envelope limit protection system which prevents maneuvers from exceeding the aircraft's aerodynamic and structural limits. Variants: A330-300. The A330-300 is based on a stretched A300 fuselage 63.69 am long but with new wings, stabilizers and fly-by-wire systems. The A300 carries 295 passengers in a 3-class cabin layout, 335 in 2-class, or up to 440 in an all-economy layout. It has a range of 10,500 km. It has a large cargo capacity, comparable to that of early Boeing 747s. It is powered by the choice of 2 General Electric CF6-ATE, Pratt Whitney PW4000, or Rolls-Royce Trent 700 engines, all of which are ETOPS 180 rated. The A300 entered service in January 1994. In 2010 Airbus offered a new version of the A300 with the maximum gross weight increased by 2 tons to 235 t. This enabled 120 nm extension of the range as well as 1.2 t increase in payload. In mid-2012, Airbus proposed another increase of the maximum gross weight to 240 tons. It is planned to be implemented by mid-2015. This A300 version will have the range extended by 400 nm and will carry 5 t more payload. It will include engine and aerodynamic improvements reducing its fuel burn by about 2%. In November 2012 it was further announced that the gross weight will increase to 242 tons, while the range will be extended by 500 nautical miles to 6,100 nautical miles. Airbus is also planning to activate the central fuel tank for the first time for the A300 model. As of January 2014, 686-300s had been ordered, 497 of which had been delivered, with 490 in operation. The 2011 list price is $222.5 a million. The closest competitors have been the Boeing 767-400ER, Boeing 777-200-200ER, and the now out-of-production McDonnell Douglas MD-11. A330-200. The A330-200 is a shortened, longer-range variant, which entered service in 1998. Typical range with 253 passengers in a 3-class configuration is 13,400 km. The A330-200 is 10 fuselage frames shorter than the original A300, with a length of 58.82 am. To compensate for the smaller moment arm of the shorter fuselage, the vertical stabilizer height of the A200 was increased by 104 cm. The A200's wing was also modified. Structural strengthening of the wing allowed the maximum takeoff weight of the A200 to be increased to 229.8 tons. The A200 is offered with 3 engine types similar to those found on the A300, namely the General Electric CF6-ATE, Pratt Whitney PW4000, or Rolls-Royce Trent 700. Airbus also boosted fuel capacity to 139,100 L by adding the center section fuel tank, standard in the A340. In 2008, Airbus released plans for a higher gross weight version of the A330-200 to more effectively compete against the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The new-build A330-200 HGW had a 5-ton increase in maximum takeoff weight, allowing a 560 km range increase and a 3.4 tons payload increase. Korean Air became the first customer on February 27, 2009 with an order for 6 A200 HGWs. Deliveries of the first aircraft started in 2010. In mid-2012, Airbus proposed another version of the A200 with the maximum gross weight increased by 2 tons to 240 t. This version will have its range extended by 270 mi and will carry 2.5 t more payload. It will see engine and aerodynamic improvements reducing its fuel burn by about 2%. It is planned to enter the service by mid-2015. In November 2012, it was announced that the gross weight is to be further increased to 242 t with the range extended by 350 mi. As of January 2014, 588 of the A200 had been ordered, 524 of which had been delivered, with 517 aircraft in operation. The 2011 list price is $200.8 a million. The A200 competes with the Boeing 767-300ER and to a lesser extent the 767-400ER as well as with new 787 Dreamliner. The A330-200 is also available as an ultra-long-range corporate jet as the A330-200 Prestige. A330-200F. The A330-200F is an all-cargo derivative of the A330-200 capable of carrying 65 AT over 7,400 km or 70 tons up to 5,900 km. To overcome the standard A330's nose-down body angle on the ground, the A330F uses a revised nose undercarriage layout to provide a level deck during cargo loading. The normal A330-200 undercarriage is used, but its attachment points are lower in the fuselage, thus requiring a distinctive blister fairing on the nose to accommodate the retracted nose gear. Power is provided by 2 Pratt & Whitney PW4000 or Rolls-Royce Trent 700 engines. General Electric does not plan to offer an engine for the A330-200F. As of January 2014, Airbus had delivered 25 aircraft with 14 unfilled orders. The list price is $203.6 a million. As well as new-build freighters, Airbus has proposed passenger-to-freighter conversions of existing A200 airliners. The A330-200F is sized between the 767-300F and 777F, A330 converted freighter. In 2012, Airbus announced plans for a passenger-to-freighter program with Saint Aerospace. The A330-300 and A200 are to be part of the P2F program with the A300 to come first and the A200 to follow a year later. Conversion work will be done mainly in Dresden, Germany. Qatar Airways has already showed interest in the program. The aircraft is expected to enter service in 2016. The A330-300 P2F variant has a payload of 60 tons with the range of 2,200 nautical miles or 61 tons with the range of 3,600 nautical miles for the higher MTOW variants. The A330-200 P2F will carry the payload of up to 59 tons on ranges up to 4,000 nautical miles. Airbus estimates the market demand for the conversions at 900 units during the next 20 years. A330-800 Neo. The Airbus A330-800 Neo was announced on 14 July 2014 by Airbus and will directly replace the Airbus A330-200. It will feature next-generation Rolls-Royce Trent 7000 engines and A350-style winglets. The aircraft is scheduled to enter service in early 2018 with an unidentified customer. A330-900 Neo. The Airbus A330-900 Neo was also announced on 14 July 2014, and is expected to enter service at the end of 2017. It will burn 14% less fuel than A330-300 on per-seat basis and will have 10 more seats achieved with an interior reconfiguration to save space. Like the 800 Neo, it will be equipped with Trent 7000 engines having thrust of 72,000 pounds, fan diameter of 112 in and a bypass ration of 10-1. AirAsia X announced its Memorandum of Understanding for 50 of the A330-900 Neo variant at the 2014 Farnborough International Air Show and will become the first airline to receive the new engine option aircraft. Beluga replacement. Airbus could be planning to design a replacement aircraft for the Beluga that would be based on the Airbus A330. Military variants. Airbus A330 Mrtt. The Airbus A330 Mrtt is the multi-role transport and tanker version of the A330-200, designed for aerial refueling and strategic transport. As of June 2011, 28 total orders have been placed for the A330 Mrtt by the Air Forces of Australia, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom. EADS Northrop Grumman KC-45. The EADS Northrop Grumman KC-45 was a proposed version of the A330 Mrtt for the United States Air Force's KC-X aerial refueling program. In February 2008, the USAF selected the aircraft to replace the Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker. The replacement process was mired in controversy, instances of corruption, and allegations of favoritism. In July 2010, EADS submitted a tanker bid to the USAF without Northrop Grumman as a partner. However, on February 24, 2011, the USAF picked the Boeing KC-767 proposal, later named KC-46, as the winner because of its lower cost. Undeveloped variants, A330-200 Light. To compete with Boeing's 787, Airbus offered a minimum change derivative called the A330-200 Light in 2004. As the name indicated, this proposed variant would have had a lower maximum takeoff weight of 202 tons, coupled with derated engines, giving a range of 7,400 km. It was aimed at Singapore Airlines, who had looked to replace its Airbus A310-300s. The variant was also to be a replacement for Airbus A300-600RS and early Boeing 767s. Airlines, however, were not satisfied with the compromised aircraft. The company instead proceeded with an entirely new aircraft, the A350XWB. A330-300 HGW. In 2000, it was reported that Airbus was studying an A330-300 version with a higher gross weight. It was named A330-300 HGW and had a takeoff weight of 240 tons, 7 tons greater than the A300's weight. The version would have a strengthened wing and additional fuel capacity from a 41,600-litre center section fuel tank. The A330-300 HGW's range was increased to over 11,000 km. Among those that showed interest was leasing company ILFC, which sought airliners that could fly from the U.S. West Coast to Europe. Power was to be supplied by all three engines offered to the two other A330 passenger models. Airbus also considered using the new engine Alliance GP7000 engine for the A330-300 HGW, which would have been the engine's first twin-jet application. The A300 HGW was to enter airline service in 2004. However, the program was not launched and quietly disappeared. The 240-ton A330 would reappear years later when Airbus announced at the 2012 Farnborough Air Show that it would be an available option for both the A330-300 and the A330-200. A330-500, also known as the A330-100, the A330-500 was a proposed shrink of the A330-200 version launched in July 2000 at the Farnborough Air Show, with 8 fuselage frames removed 4 ahead and 4 behind the wing. This would allow for the seating of 222 passengers. The A500's maximum takeoff weight was to be 228 tons, a 5-ton decrease from the A330-200, allowing a range of 12,970 km. A lighter sub-variant, at 195 tons, would have flown up to 8,060 km. The aircraft would have had 5% better specific fuel consumption than the A300-600, powered by either the CF6-ATG2, Parley, 4000, or the Trent 500. Prospective customers included ILFC, CIT Aerospace, Lufthansa, and Hapag-Lloyd. The latter two, however, were unimpressed with the long-range variant, preferring a shorter-range aircraft, which was better suited to their route structure. Singapore Airlines was also an expected customer because it was looking for a replacement for the A310. Airbus intended to freeze the design in late 2001, with the first flight scheduled for the third quarter of 2003 and entry into service within a year. The program was later abandoned, as interest from customers was lacking. Operators. As of January 2014, there are 1041 examples of all A330 variants in airline service, including 520 A330-200s, 25-200FS, and 496-300s. Airline operators are Air China, China Eastern Airlines, Cathay Pacific, Turkish Airlines, Delta Airlines, Qatar Airways, Etihad Airways, Qantas, Thai Airways International, China Southern Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Korean Air, China Airlines, Aeroflot, Malaysia Airlines, Emirates, US Airways, TAM Liners Airas, Dragona, Lufthansa, Garuda Indonesia, AirAsia X, KLM, Air France and others with fewer of the type. As of May 2013, the largest operator of A330s is Cathay Pacific, which together with its subsidiary Dragona has 55 aircraft in service. Orders and deliveries, data through end of June 2014, incidents and accidents. As of February 2012, the Airbus A330 had been involved in 13 major aviation occurrences, including 6 confirmed hull loss accidents and 2 hijackings, for a total of 339 fatalities. The type's first fatal accident occurred on June 30, 1994 near Toulouse on a test flight when an Airbus-owned A330-300 crashed while simulating an engine failure on climb-out, killing all 7 on board. Airbus subsequently advised A330 operators to disconnect the autopilot and limit pitch attitude in the event of an engine failure at low speed. On March 15, 2000, the Malaysia Airlines A330-300 suffered fuselage damage from leaked corrosive chemical that had been falsely labeled. The aircraft was written off. The type's second fatal accident, and first while in commercial service, occurred on June 1, 2009 when Air France Flight 447, an A330-200 en route from Rio de Janeiro to Paris with 228 people on board, crashed in the Atlantic Ocean 640 (800 km) northeast of the islands of Fernando de Noronha, with no survivors. Malfunctioning pitot tubes provided an early focus for the investigation, as the aircraft involved had fails-built AA models known to record faulty airspeed data during icing conditions. In July 2009, Airbus advised A330 and A340 operators to replace Thales pitot with equivalents manufactured by Goodrich. Investigators later determined that the inadequate response of the pilots to both a loss of airspeed data and subsequent autopilot disengagement resulted in Flight 447 entering into an aerodynamic stall. On May 12, 2010, Africa Airways Flight 771, an A330-200, crashed on approach to Tripoli International Airport, Libya, on a flight from OR Tambo International Airport, Johannesburg, South Africa. Of the 104 people on board, all but one 9-year-old Dutch boy died. The aftermath of the 2011 Libyan civil war hampered the accident investigation. The two hijackings involving the A330 have resulted in one fatality, namely the hijacker of Philippine Airlines Flight 812 on May 25, 2000, who jumped out of the aircraft to his death. The hijacking of Sabina Flight 689 on October 13, 2000 ended with no casualties when Spanish police took control of the aircraft. On July 24, 2001, two unoccupied Sri Lankan Airlines A330s were destroyed amid an attack on Bandaranaike International Airport, in Colombo, Sri Lanka, by the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. On December 25, 2009, passengers and crew subdued a man who attempted to detonate explosives in his underwear on an A330-300 operating Northwest Airlines Flight 253. Two A330 incidents due to in-flight malfunctions were survived by all on board. On August 24, 2001, Air Transat Flight 236, an A330-200, developed a fuel leak over the Atlantic Ocean due to an incorrectly installed hydraulic part and was forced to glide for over 15 minutes to an emergency landing in the Azores. On October 7, 2008, Qantas Flight 72, an A330-300, suffered a rapid loss of altitude and two sudden uncommanded pitch-down maneuvers while 150 km from the Learmonth Air Base in northwestern Australia. After declaring an emergency, the crew landed the aircraft safely at Learmonth. It was later determined that the incident, which caused 106 injuries, 14 of them serious, was the result of a design flaw of the plane's air data inertial reference unit and a limitation of the aircraft's flight computer software. On April 13, 2010, Cathay Pacific Flight 780 from Surabaya International Airport to Hong Kong landed safely after both engines failed due to contaminated fuel. 57 passengers were injured. Its two pilots received the Polaris Award from the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations, for their heroism and airmanship. Specifications. Sources: Airbus, Pratt Whitney, EASA, FAA, the International Directory of Civil Aircraft, Aircraft Model Designations. Source: EASA Type Certificate Data Sheet EASA 004, see also. Competition between Airbus and Boeing, related development, Airbus A300, Airbus A330 Mrtt, Airbus A340, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Airbus A350, Boeing 767, Boeing 777-200, Boeing 787 Dreamliner, Ilyushin Il-96, related lists, list of civil aircraft, references, notes. Citations. Bibliography. Further reading. External links, details on the Airbus A330 family of aircraft, Airbus A330 information on aerospace-technology.com.